I can just pick React, and React is just going to do browser compatibility for me, or whichever framework I pick with React to go on top of it. So we're not there yet. As I'm sure those of you who have tried to deploy a Web3 application know, we're kind of like before jQuery gets invented, if we're using the internet analogy. We have all of these different browsers for Ethereum. We've got MetaMask, we've got the Ledger wallet, we've got the Trezor wallet, and countless others. There's mobile wallets, and there's probably a new wallet coming out every day. There's going to be a new way for people to access the Ethereum blockchain. So MetaMask, for example. MetaMask is probably the first wallet that you think of when you're making a dApp. It's the most obvious one. Everyone's got MetaMask. It's possibly one of the most popular browser extensions, not even considering the cryptosphere. It's extremely popular, and even it, being so simple, being injected right into the page, has its own caveats and connection checklists that you have to deal with. First of all, you can't even assume that your users have MetaMask, so they come to your page, and everything you're doing relies on Web3. You're using Web3 to talk to the contract, you're using Web3 to do your transactions, and yet you don't even know if Web3 exists. You have to test for the type of Web3 being undefined. And then even if the user does have MetaMask could be unlocked. It could be connected to Kovan, and your application runs on the main Ethereum network. And so these are like all application states that you have to represent, you have to think about and convey to your users in a meaningful way. The ledger is even more complicated. It has all the same issues connecting as MetaMask does, where the device could physically not even be connected to the user's computer. It also can be locked, and it even locks itself every however many minutes you configure it for. I think 5 or 10 minutes it'll lock itself. And then it has this idea of browser mode. So does anyone here have a ledger? A couple people here. Do you guys use it on the browser, the web browser? No. Yeah, I agree. So you got this idea of browser mode, and it's something that Ledger doesn't even really kind of tell you about when you're going through all the setup process and everything. But browser mode is essentially what allows the website to send the signal over the U2F protocol over the USB port to go into the ledger to get that signature. And if it's not enabled, it's just going to be silent failure, and you're stuck Googling. And hopefully the pages that answer those questions are now fairly high at the top of the index. And even if you have browser support enabled, the ledger has this idea of smart contract mode. So smart contract mode, I don't really know why they would have this idea. If you're sending Ether, you're sending Ether, in my opinion. But smart contract mode allows the user to not allow data to be sent with the transaction, and by default it's set to off. So the user also, they have to turn browser mode on, and then they have to turn smart contract mode on. And there's all these separate issues with connecting the ledger, and that's just to get the device connected. We haven't even gotten to the actual sending transactions into the ledger, sending transactions into MetaMask, and all the different oddities that arise from that. So the Trezor, this is a little snapshot from the Trezor documentation on GitHub. And what we can see, I don't know if you guys can read this, but maybe I can blow it up. No, I can't. So Trezor has its own library, Trezor Connect. And the way that Trezor Connect works is it's almost like an OAuth window where you send a signal into Trezor Connect, and the window pops up, and then they handle pretty much everything else for you. And you can see it's not Web3 compatible at all. So if you're trying to support the Trezor, then you have to supply your own Web3, and you got to bring your own RPC provider. So you got to talk to Infura, and then you have to do something to get the data you need for your transaction calls. You're going to have to somehow get your smart contract ABI to produce the proper function call, and then you're going to have to send that function call into the Trezor using this custom code that you might want to use, or that you have to use. So fortunately, well, not so fortunate for the poignancy of my talk, but fortunately for the community, MetaMask released hardware wallet connection, which was something that I think people had been begging them to do for ages. And so I think a month ago they got the Trezor, and then a couple weeks ago they got the Ledger. So that's at least something that's super helpful to help you get MetaMask and Ledger and Trezor, and there's a lot less code that you have to write. So that's good. But it's still not perfect. We still have inconsistencies in a lot of areas. I was playing around with the Ledger MetaMask integration the other day as I was revamping the form of my talk because it was far more about doing Ledger stuff, and so now I kind of want to have shifted to talking about what still needs to be patched up. And anyone here use state channels in their apps? No. Okay. Is anyone here familiar with state channels? Okay, cool. A good number of people. So for those that don't know, state channels are a way to essentially have state changes that occur off-chain between like one or more parties, where essentially we have an agreement and then we send cryptographic signatures back and forth, and then we can finalize the transaction on-chain later when everything is said and done. They're very cool. If you're thinking about making a dApp, I strongly recommend you go down the rabbit hole of learning about state channels and how those work. But for our purposes, to run state channels, you need to be able to do cryptographic signatures. And there's two functions to do cryptographic signatures with Web3. There's the ETH sign function, and that takes 32 bytes of data, and then does the elliptic curve digital signature algorithm on those 32 bytes. And then there's the personal sign, which it takes in arbitrary data. And the advantage of personal sign was that ETH sign was really insecure. If you were ETH signing data in MetaMask, a malicious dApp could make it look like you were just signing some data, but really they were making a transaction to send all of your Ether to them. So you've got these two conflicting implementations of the same thing, and they don't work the same across all devices. They don't work the same on Ganache when you're in the development phase. They don't work the same on MetaMask when you're in staging, and they don't work the same on Ledger when you're doing your production application work. The way that ETH sign works in Ganache is it actually does personal sign, and then the personal sign method just doesn't exist. MetaMask allows both, but if you do an ETH sign with MetaMask, they rightfully so give you this very scary warning that a lot of DEXs are actually having to just deal with it because they designed their software around using ETH sign and they don't have any other options. And then they also support personal sign. Ledger accepts the ETH sign RPC call, but it does a personal sign instead. And then the way they accept data is differently. MetaMask accepts data as hexadecimal, Ledger accepts data UTF-8 encoded. So the thing that I'm getting to here is that we're shaping this every day with our decisions as developers, and for the non-developers, we're also shaping this with our decisions as to what wallets we use, how we interact with them, what we like, the feedback that we give. And so one thing that I've done is I've started a very simple package that you guys can include in your dApps to at least provide you with some small amount of relief from all of these crazy different fractured components. So I tried to come up with this idea, the Ethereum detection format. Essentially the idea is that your dApp doesn't care probably which wallet a user is using. Your dApp probably just wants to send information to it and have the information be signed or reviewed or submitted or what have you. So the idea is that you make one function call and you get the full configuration of whatever wallet it is that exists. In this case, just working on MetaMask right now. And then it comes back and it says, okay, is the wallet available? So for the Ledger, that would be, is it connected? For the MetaMask, that would be, is it installed? Is it unlocked? Is it ready to be used? Can we get the accounts? And then can we get the network ID? Because, and again, in MetaMask, you can choose the network ID and in parity, I believe. So the NPM package is called Web3 Detect. It's really simple. It's one function call. It's a small amount of code. It has no dependencies. But where I'm imagining this goes is I'm imagining a series of modules that manage this whole process start to back, or front to back. So the first thing is user selects their wallet preference. and it gets stored somewhere. And a big part of experiences that we see with Kyber and with Bancor and with exchanges that really have to support the hardware wallets because people won't use them if they don't, is they allow the user to select which wallet they're using out of like 6 different wallets, and they store that choice. And so something to help manage that pattern of what are the list of available wallets, how do we select it, how do we make sure that the user actually has that wallet, and then store that information somewhere. How do we get the configuration of that wallet after we've done that? And then how do we tell the user, what language do we use to tell the user the different states that their wallet is in? No, they didn't know their wallet was unlocked. And then finally, the last thing that this theoretical system of models would do is filling in the gaps in implementation. And so like I was talking about the ETH sign issue earlier. So a module that has clear documentation about what you put in and what comes out, and then it doesn't matter which wallet the user has. The module just shims the code so that whatever you meant or whatever that wallet wants, it gives it that to produce the desired result. So there's no more issues between personal sign and ETH sign. We just have one function, and we know what it does, and it doesn't matter if the user is making is using the Ledger or MetaMask or Trezor or whichever wallet. So that's the end of my talk. I'd love to open it up for questions if you guys have any. Go ahead.
Are you familiar with the EIP 712?
Yes, I am. That's a great, I almost put slides in about that.
Yeah, can you speak to that and how that fits with what you've written and MetaMask and everything else?
Yeah, okay, so EIP 712 is a spec now that's nearing the final stages. And here, I'll even pull it up just so we have something to look at. But the idea is that if you are signing stuff from your Ethereum wallet, if you're signing stuff from your Ethereum wallet, you get windows like this. That's the EIP 712 example. You get windows like this here that say signing this message can have dangerous side effects. Only sign messages from sites you fully trust. And then the alternative is you see something like this, which looks like wingdings because MetaMask is displaying hex font. It's displaying hex as UTF-8, so there's a ton. I mean, it doesn't encode that way. It shows up as question marks. And so EIP 712 is a standard that allows us to not just sign data according to some rules, but it allows us to actually provide metadata to the wallet about what we're signing. So in this case, can you guys read this? Should I blow this up? Blow it up. See what I can do. So in this case, you're in MetaMask and you can see, okay, what message am I signing? Oh, I'm signing mail from person Alice, wallet address this, to person Bob. You have a human context for the data that you're signing. I tried to use the EIP 712 in its very first implementation, and it was really cool. It was very unique. I showed it off to some other blockchain nerds, and they were very pumped about it because they got it. They understood what was cool about it. The problem was that the spec twisted and mutated a lot, so I haven't looked at it in a long time. But it's a huge step forward, and this is exactly the purpose of this talk is these types of connectors that fill in these gaps for users. Where if you saw that hex data at a bank, if your banker gave you this and was like, "Oh, can you sign this?" You'd be like, "Hell no, absolutely not." And these are big barriers to adoption because users see things like this and they already aren't that inclined to want to know much about the blockchain, and then they see stuff that's really scary like that. And yeah, did that answer your question at all?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Oh, do you see anything on the horizon for connecting ledgers or Trezors to phones and interacting? Like, have you seen anything, any type of hope at all?
I am not familiar with the current state of it, but I do have an on-the-go kit for my Ledger because I have all the USB-C ports only, and I don't see why it would be impossible. It might exist.
So you can plug your maybe you can plug your Ledger into.
I mean, I can like physically plug them all together. If the magic inside is going to work, I don't know, but I can't imagine it would be very far off if Sorry, was there a question back here?
What are your thoughts on like having a custom protocol like Ethereum : / some URL to like send transactions to different wallets, for example? Like Chrome, for example, you can overtake a custom protocol, so you could have a wallet that would support that, or like Electron has that kind of
There's a BIP for that, like transaction URL.
Yeah, there's an early BIP for that. Like,
It sounds really interesting. The more native, the more baked in we go, the far happier I will be to have users come to the site. It's like, oh, don't worry, they've already got MetaMask installed. They just didn't even know it. Yeah, I would be really pumped about that.
Look into that, like custom protocol is what you would be looking for that if you want to look at it.
I'm sorry, say that again?
It's a custom protocol.
Okay.
Is what you like the technical term for that would be.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely look into that because it sounds really cool.
Have you played around with Portis
No.
and their software wallet?
I haven't.
Okay. It's a JavaScript package that is cross-browser compatible. So
Okay.
you can get people, onboarded into Ethereum using Portis wallet. I don't work for Portis, but I've used them in a couple dApps, and they're pretty cool. They give you $1 for signing up. It is a centralized wallet provider,
Okay.
so you do have to, trust them with your key. But aside from that, it's one of the easiest onboarding things I've seen that lets you run all transactions through the Portis provider, just like you're running through MetaMask.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was in is there like a KYC process for that?
There's an onboarding like user email, but I think they use Coinbase to onboard fiat as part of it's its own UI like MetaMask that'll pop up that says like sign up for a Portis wallet.
Okay.
But it's in JavaScript, so you don't need a Chrome browser extension for this.
And you get like a free dollar or whatever, and they hold your keys and all of that, just serving as your wallet providers, like without going through like actual KYC onboarding. That's just email based.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, if he's done, I was going to ask him.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so do you know anything about the MetaMask deprecating injecting Web3 and like, I know that they're supposed to stop on November 2nd, and it's still really unclear like what you're supposed to do as a dApp developer to deal with that. Like, is everything just going to break on November 1st, 2nd, or what's going to happen?
Yeah, right. I've spent a good deal of time going back and forth with Dan Finlay of MetaMask on GitHub, and we have different development philosophies a little bit, I think. And so I don't know. I guess the idea was that Web3 was like never a good idea to inject into the page anyways. It's also a privacy thing. They don't want sites to know that you have an Ethereum wallet baked into your browser. And it's mainly for privacy. I think at the end it might actually clear some things up a little bit where we're not injecting Web3 and it's up to the developer to pick which Web3 needs to go where. But as far as upgrading, so I think they're moving towards Ethereum provider. How they're getting you an Ethereum provider into the page, I am still unclear because that would be just as detectable by websites. But I think the pattern is that the website has to essentially initiate some kind of contact with MetaMask, probably through their Chrome extension ID, and then the user gets like a notification that says, this website wants to know about your Ethereum wallet, approve, deny, and then they click approve, and then they can know about the wallet. So
I mean, that's my understanding too, but like, can you test that now? Is that, I don't really understand. Like,
yeah, November 1st is coming up, isn't it?
It is. I was looking at their page right now, and it says to test this, you have to download a custom build of MetaMask, which sounds horrible. So.
Yeah, doing the custom build, if you're interested, I think you got to turn developer mode on in your browser, and then you download the custom build, and it's actually pretty straightforward from there. You just like drag and drop it, but it's going to blast all your keys to hell, and it's not going to work super well.
So do you predict a lot of things breaking on 1st November?
If they remove Web3 if they remove Web3 injection, absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
Every dapple brick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And then r/BTC will have a laugh at that.
But just stop recommending it. It'll still, like, you'll still be able to use.
I remember
plugins.
first reading it, I mean, like,
I'm sorry.
I was just saying, like, you'll still be able to use the plugins. They just are not going to recommend that you do that anymore.
You won't be able to use, or you still be able to
Right.
use which
Like-
plugins?
The MetaMask one, right? Like, if you
Well, if
want
they
to,
block your sign in, I guess.
well, like, I'd imagine they will still inject it. No,
No, so they're not putting
they're
Web3.
not going to inject it at all anymore.
Yeah, if
From
you ever,
MetaMask?
if you look at the script of a page when you have MetaMask open, they inject a script into the
Yeah,
page that's their
yeah.
MetaMask in-page provider.
Mhm.
And
And then use that to
it's
sign in.
honestly it's kind of a good thing that we're getting rid of it, in my opinion. I don't really want to, like, as I'm browsing, have MetaMask be shoveling shit into the DOM on every single page ever that I visit.
You also have to deal with it being pulled off of a window and the fact that, like, okay, if you want to test it, now you gotta deal with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
global variables.
If they release it in a nice way, where it's not a big shocker to the whole community.
They have been deprecating and undeprecating things at very, very inconsistent intervals, and also, the Web3, the ETH sign, they were going to change the functionality to personal sign because they didn't want users to be tricked. Even though there's that big scary message, when we need to make a trade on IDEX, we all click through the big scary message anyways because it's IDEX, but I mean, they're not going to get hacked, it's fine. And they said they were going to deprecate that for ages. And I think that behavior still exists in the most current version of MetaMask. So deprecation of Web3 injection on November 1st, I don't know, it's a coin flip. Awesome. Is that everything? Is there a question? Thanks, guys. Oh, go ahead.
We got time. What's your sense about like browser vendors? Do you have a sense that MetaMask is going to be obsolete or incorporated into browsers? That functionality in the near future? Is there?
Does anyone here use Brave browser? So Brave has some form of Web3 already baked in. Are the major browsers going to bake it in? I don't know. I don't think that an extension is MetaMask's final home. I don't know any plans that they have to act on that, but it can read all of the data on every website you visit, which seems to me like a bit of a security issue for a lot of people. And so I don't think that the best place for an Ethereum wallet is to be a browser extension. I think it's a great stepping stone solution right now where we want to get people on Ethereum, and it's a really easy way to do that. But I think eventually having it baked into your browser, or better yet, having it baked into your computer, where your Ethereum wallet and all the private keys are in an isolated storage component of your hardware on your laptop, and then you have like a button or a hardware interface for it. I think that would be ideal. So yeah, hopefully it comes vendored in with everything.
Yep.
One password.
All right, guys, thank you.